Dividing decimals lesson 3. Let's begin with the dividing decimals warm-up. You may need to decide how to divide decimals and come up with a plan to figure out how many items that you can buy with the money that you have. So let's begin by estimating the quotient of each of these decimal scenarios. Question number 1, in order for us to round this, remember we like to look at the whole number. So we're looking at the whole value here and the number that falls directly next to it. If that number is 5 or more, we add to that ones place. And if it's not, we just leave the ones place as it is and everything else changes to a 0. So for problem number 1, that means we would have 12 divided by, underline the 5 here. That 3 is less than 5, so that means we keep the 5 just as we see it. 12 divided by 5 there. Now we're going to do long division here, and I'll just move over to this side. 12 divided by 5. 5 cannot go into 1 at all, so we do not write any numbers there. However, 5 can go into 12 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. So now we subtract those. 12 minus 10 is 2. And because we cannot take 2 from 5, we can always NX and add a 0 here. And then drop that down so that we can continue to use it in our problem. Now we know that if we have 20 of something and we wanted to divide it out by 5, then we can do that 4 times. Because 4 times 5 is 20. And then we subtract as we usually do, and that gives us 20 minus 20, which is a value of 0. So for this first problem, even though we estimated, we got a decimal answer of approximately 2.4, or 2 4/10. Let's do that one again. Problem number 2. We're looking at this 8 here and the number directly next to it. Because that 7 is greater than 5, we know that we add 1 to that ones place, which gives us a value of 69. We're going to divide that 69 by 1. Now, do you notice how I got that there? 69 divided by 1. Because that 6 is greater than 5, we add 1 to that 0. So 69 divided by 1 is approximately 69. And we can continue on looking at problem number 3. We're going to look at that ones place and the number directly next to it. Because that is less than 5, we're going to keep it as it is. And move over that 144, everything else changes to a 0. And that 144 is going to be divided by, that 8 is greater than 5, so that means we add 1 there, and that's going to be divided by 10. Now we know that when we divide by 10, we just shift the decimal to the left, because when we shift it to the right, we're multiplying by 10. So that answer would give us approximately 14.4. One more time, let's look at question number 4. We're looking at this one value here and the 7 that is directly next to it. Because that 7 is greater than 5, we're going to add 1 there, and that will give us a value of 42. We're going to divide that by 6. Because that 0 is less than 5, we just keep it the same way that we see it. So 42 divided by 6 is approximately 7. That is how we are estimating these quotients, and it is perfectly fine if we get a decimal estimate. All right, let's practice dividing some decimals without estimation. In order to divide decimals without estimation, step number 1 is to count out the decimal in the divisor. Step number 2 is to move the decimal to the right the number of times you counted out the decimal in the divisor, and you do that to the dividend. Step number 3 is to place the decimal point from the dividend above the line. So you may hear me say, pop that decimal up, and I will show you exactly what that means. Step number 4 is divide as you would whole numbers. So let's begin with this problem. We have 325 and 2800ths divided by 30 4/10. Now, step number 1 is to move the decimal out of the divisor. And we know that this here is our divisor, so we move that decimal 1 space. Because we're only moving the decimal 1 space for the divisor, that means when we go into the dividend, we move that decimal 1 space as well, and we pop it straight up. So whatever our answer is, right before that last digit is where we're going to hold that decimal. So what this problem actually says now is 304 dividing into 3,252.8. But remember, we leave that decimal point on top, not on the inside. So as we're working through it, can we take 304 away from 3? No, we can't. Can we take it from 32? No, we can't. But we can take it from 325. So that means here I can put a 1. 1 times 304 is 304. And we can subtract from there. 5 minus 4 is 1, 2 minus 0 is 2, and 3 minus 3 is 0. Now, if we have 304 that we need to remove and we only have 21 available, we are not able to take that amount from that. So we need to bring down our next value, which would be 212. Now, here you see that we can still not take 304 away from 212. So we're going to multiply by 0. 0 times any number we know is 0. And when we subtract that, that leaves us with 212 and allows us to bring our next number down. So now we're looking at 2,128 that we want to divide by 304. When we do that, we get the value of 7. 7 times 304. Let's work it together. 7 times 4 is 28. It's going to give us a 2 here. 7 times 0 is 0 plus 2. 7 times 3 is 21. So you see as we subtract that there, that will give us a value of 0. So our answer for this problem is 10 and 7/10. All right, let's try a few more. 10 divided by 4 hundredths. So we write 10 divided by 4 hundredths. Now, how many spaces do we need to move that decimal out to get it out of that divisor? And that answer is 2 spaces. So that means even though we don't see a decimal, we can pretend it's there and annex 2 zeros in so that we can move those 2 decimal places out. And remember to pop that decimal straight up. Now, sometimes you have to extend your line as you see me doing there, but please don't forget where that decimal goes. So now what this problem is actually saying is 4 into 1,000. And our decimal falls right behind that 1,000. Let's do our long division here. If we have 1, can we take 4 away from there? That answer is no. But if we have 10, we can take 2 4s out because 2 times 4 is 8. From there, we can subtract. 10 minus 8 is 2. And now we have 2 items available where we want to take 4 out. We cannot do that. So we must bring down a 0 here. Once we bring down our 0, that gives us 20. 4 from 20 would be able to be taken 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. As we're subtracting there, that gives us the value of 0. Now, we may think that we're finished here, but we are not. We have to use all of our digits in front of that decimal place, which gives us a value of 0. And we know when we have 0, we cannot take anything from it. So 0 times 4 would be that 0 there. And we can just subtract to get a value of 0. Now, do we need to move further behind the decimal? No, because there are no additional digits behind the decimal. The answer in this case would simply be 250. Very good. Let's continue with the next problem. We have 21 hundredths divided by 6 tenths. How many times do we need to move that decimal in the divisor? One single space. So our dividend copies our divisor, and we also move that decimal one single space, and then we pop it up. So that looks like 6 into, and I'm going to use all of the decimal places, or excuse me, all of the place values here, just so that you see I am not throwing that 0 away. All right, if we have that value of 21 there, we still have to add our decimal place between the 2 and the 1, but it is now above our dividing line. If we have 2, can we take 6 away? That answer would be no. So here we add a 0. Here we add a 0. 0 times 6 is 0, and we can subtract there to give us another value here of 2. Now we remember that we have to use all of our values that are available to us if we can, which means now we have a value of 21. When you have 21 of something, how many times can you take 6 away? That answer is 3, because 3 times 6 is 18. So we're going to subtract there. And remember, let's not forget to borrow. Let's change that 2 to a 1 and change this one to an 11. So 11 minus 8. That's what we're looking at there. 11 minus 8 is 3. 1 minus 1 is 0. So now we don't have any other place values to utilize, but we do have 3 left, and we need to get rid of that 3. So here we can annex and add zeros and drop it down so that we have a value of 30. And if we have 30, we can definitely take 6 away. We can take 6 away 5 times, because 5 times 6 is 30. 30 minus 30 is 0. So that means our answer would be 35 hundredths. All right, so hopefully you were able to follow that step, and you are understanding that step number 1 is to count those decimals out, beginning with the divisor, and then following up with the dividend and popping it up, multiplying as you normally would, and keeping everything just the same. All right, let's show your skills and practice dividing decimals using a real-world scenario. You have a dog walking business, and last week you earned 7.5 hours and earned $41.25. How much do you earn per hour? So they would like us to take the $41.25 and divide it by the $7.50, or the 7.5 hours or 7.5 hours that you work. So the way that we write that one is 41.25 divided by 7.5. Now we know we have to count those decimals out, and we begin with the divisor. So we count this decimal out here 1 space. That means we count this decimal out here 1 space and pop it straight up. That problem should now look like 75 from 4125, with our decimal falling right there in between the 2 and the 5 above our line. So if you have 4 items, could you take 75 away? The answer is no. If you have 41 items, could you take 75 away? The answer is still no. But if you have 412 items, you absolutely can take 75 away, and you can do that 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. So we're going to plus 2 there. 5 times 7 is 35. Plus 2 is 37. So that's what we're going to subtract there. We have 412 minus 375. Let's walk through that together, making sure that we're borrowing as we need to. Okay, so here we have 5 that we cannot take away from 2, so we can change that 1 to a 0 and that 2 to a 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. Now we have essentially 40. Let's try that again. We have 40 minus 37, and 40 minus 37 is 3. So you have a bunch of different ways to look at those problems as whole numbers. If you need to borrow, please feel free to do that. Now remember, we have to use all of our spaces. So here we have 375. And because we just figured that one out, that 75 times 5 is 375, we know that we can pop a 5 right back up here again and get another value of 375. We know that 375 minus 375 is 0. So that means for this problem, this person worked 7.5 hours, earning a total of $41.25. And during 1 hour of work, that means they earned $5.50. Please do not forget, because we're talking about money, that decimal place value has to end in hundreds. All right, thank you for learning with me. Happy learning.